And when they installed the solution with the 7053 HP washer, it really changed their workflow for all of the instrumentation, especially Da Vinci instruments. They no longer have the backlog for a large portion of the day in decontam. The instruments are getting through to the clean side with much less rework.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you're tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now, turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this vendor spotlight, we speak with Sarah Brown, Senior Product Manager at STERIS. And when you think about reprocessing robotic instruments, what kind of a reaction do you get? And now I'll tell you, back in 2018, the FDA provided guidance around reprocessing robotic surgical instruments. And while it had standardization in mind, there was some manual processes for cleaning that made things very labor and time intensive. And so we're going to be talking with Sarah today about what they brought to the market to make that automated, save your facilities and your staff time in reprocessing those robotic instruments. And so it's going to be a great conversation today. Hopefully you're going to learn about a new technology that's coming out that's going to help you and your departments create a more repeatable and reliable process for reprocessing robotic instruments. We're going to be right back after a short break with Sarah Brown, Senior Product Manager at STERIS.
From 17 studios, you're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining us now is Sarah Brown, Senior Product Manager at STERIS. And Sarah, I'm really excited to talk to you today about some enhancements to reprocessing Da Vinci EndoWrist instruments with the AMSCO 7000 HP washers and RAS cycle and racks. I think our listeners will also be interested to hear about the collaboration between STERIS and Intuitive Surgical in bringing this solution to U.S. customers. Sarah, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here, Dustin.
So we have a series of these podcasts that we're doing with STERIS, and I'm excited to talk about this conversation today because robotics is just one of those that as we get into that conversation, sometimes, especially for sterile processing, they don't always get that advanced notice. And so I can't wait to talk about that and the challenges that exist in the industry. But first, I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about your background and your role with STERIS before we get started.
Sure. So I work with our washing technologies at STERIS. I work with the washer disinfectors, our sonic cleaners, as well as washing automation. I've been with STERIS about 6 years, and I would describe myself as a serial product manager, especially in the healthcare space. I've worked for other medical device companies outside of STERIS, but I really enjoy working on products that help other people. So STERIS definitely fits right in with my own personal interests.
Well, and what a huge opportunity there was in the industry that you got to work on. So I'm excited to hear about that experience from your end and really what guided that process. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about STERIS? Because I know a lot of times people are thinking specifically in the healthcare space, but I know there's more to that story.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they think of STERIS, they probably think of STERIS as a sterilization and disinfection company. And we have a lot of experience doing that, working with every modality of sterilization. But really, we're a lot more just beyond that. Healthcare is definitely the largest part of what we do, but that's more and more outside of hospitals, in the ambulatory surgical market and ASCs. we have a very broad offering of products, whether it be consumable products or capital, that really serve both sterile processing and the operating rooms directly.
And what about like applied sterilization technologies? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, that's our business that's focused on medical device manufacturers. We also have our life sciences business, which is our pharma business. And just like in our healthcare business, we sell service, capital, and consumables into that market as well.
So the last one, and I think sometimes people really can separate this segment from healthcare, but it also is in healthcare. But I'm not sure that everybody's always aware about the dental side of the business.
Yeah, STERIS has a dental business that really has a comprehensive offering for dental practitioners and dental schools, from instruments to consumables and then instrument management systems. And yes, it's part of healthcare, but at the same time, we treat it as a separate business, but as part of the broader healthcare space in general.
Well, that's one of those other areas of opportunity. I know we're going to be talking about robotics today, but we did a dental conference on Beyond Clean, and there's just a lot of thirst for knowledge, education, and training, in that arena, especially for people that are working at the dental practices. So definitely an area that you're providing a great deal of support. So I want to talk about robotics. I kind of alluded to this already, but this was kind of a complicated area for many sterile processing managers and technicians to navigate, especially when it was new to market. But I think that kind of continued over time. Can you kind of describe from your experience what you saw out there and really what led to the development of products to address kind of these concerns?
I think there was something that changed in the U.S. market. Back in 2018, the FDA provided guidance around reprocessing for robotic surgical instruments with the idea that they were trying to help standardize applications there. And what happened was the FDA provided guidance that required washer disinfector manufacturers to obtain a 510(k) clearance, specifically indicating them for use with the particular instruments. And in this case, what we're all talking about are the Vinci EndoWrist instruments from Intuitive Surgical. And that's what changed. The FDA's guidance changed to require that 510(k).
So as part of that standardization process, which I think everybody who has any kind of operational mind really loves hearing the standardization because, a little bit of gray area outside when you don't have standardization really makes it hard to deliver a consistent training message to your team and your staff. And you want the reprocessing to be repeatable and consistent, and you want to have a controlled outcome every time. And so I think standardization is great, but what specifically did they wind up updating, in regards to that standardization, and what did that do for sterile processing departments? How did they have to adjust maybe their current practices?
Well, what I think happened when the guidance changed was there were different instructions at the time for SSI and XXI devices. So suddenly, sterile processing departments had the same instructions for both of those. But when the guidance changed, Intuitive also updated their documentation at the time to only include manual reprocessing. So that created the standardization it brought to both sets of devices, SSI platform and XXI. It created a challenge that the only path was to manually reprocess those devices.
Well, so we were just talking about having a consistent and repeatable process. One of the things that helps you get that is automation. And a process that is the same every single time. One thing we know about people and humans is, we are prone to making some errors, which is understandable, but manual processes to be consistent and to get the same desired outcome every time does require a lot of validation of skill set and competency validations, et cetera. And so I think, moving to something that is more automated can really help control that outcome. So I'm assuming, as part of the reason for this conversation is that was what you all at STERIS set out to do, was let's try to make this more automated. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. And that was because we heard from customers that they wanted exactly that. They wanted something that was more automated, less human dependent, and more repeatable. If you take a look at those IFUs for manual cleaning, there's a lot of steps in there. There's 14 different steps that take quite a bit of time. And I think, Justin, you identified there can be a lot of variability in how they get executed. So automation can bring more consistent outcomes to the cleaning process when it comes to any instrumentation, but particularly the robotic instruments because of how complex the devices are.
Well, complexity equals intimidation, especially for new staff too. So, if you're an educator or you're a department who doesn't have an educator, you can know that sometimes those new staff that are coming in and you're trying to grow their skill set and their competency in reprocessing, 14 different steps, something that they didn't necessarily see all the time, not general instrumentation. It can be somewhat intimidating. And so having a consistent process, something that's automated, can kind of take out a lot of the guesswork and increase confidence. Right? So what is it about, or why don't you just kind of tell me the next step in the story? As you went to develop a technology around this, what went into that? And what were some of the main considerations, for bringing a solution to the market to solve this problem?
Great question, Justin. One of the main considerations was that the FDA guidance changed, requiring 510(k) clearance for automated cleaning of Da Vinci EndoWrist instruments. But no automated cleaning solution for Da Vinci instruments had gone through this rigorous process before. This was new territory. What made this especially unique was that the instruments were made by another company, Intuitive. We worked very closely with the Intuitive team for our own regulatory process to clear the RAS solution for the 7,000 HP washers.
I got to tell you, one of the main things that I hear all the time in the industry is, which IFU should we use? And, these two contradict. So how do we know with confidence that we've made the right decision or that we have the right process and operationally in our departments so that, with patient safety in mind? And I think that collaboration is so key because it removes a lot of that guesswork. You're on the same page together with that validation. You talked a lot about how that manual process can be labor and time intensive. And I can tell you with the staffing shortages that we are seeing in sterile processing all across the country, like even if you could throw more people at the solution, there just aren't any people to do it. So getting a time saving so that we can make better use of the staff that we do have in the sterile processing departments is really critical. What kind of an impact? I know you worked with Intuitive and, you kind of collaborated, and you probably tell us about a white paper, but at the end of the day, like how much time savings did you see from bringing automation to this?
When customers use the RAS cycle and the RAS racks in the 7052 and 7053 HP washers, they achieve approximately a 25% time reduction in instrument reprocessing, which is fairly significant. And that's just for 4 instruments, which is a typical set used in a case. If you multiply that, by 4, you're going to get even more. I mean, you're going to save substantially more if it's a high volume facility doing more robotic cases.
That 25% reduction, like how many minutes are we talking, for like you said, I think 4 sets, how many minutes of savings is that?
For a set of 4 instruments would be 60 minutes in savings.
Oh,
so
right. Not 4 sets, 4 instruments.
Yeah. 4 instruments would be an hour savings of time in the instrument reprocessing time. And
yeah, that's an
grows.
eighth of a shift.
It is.
That's substantial. It really is. Can you tell me a little bit more about the white paper then? What are some of the details that are outlined in that?
The white paper details the collaboration between Intuitive and STERIS in bringing the RAS cycle and racks to market for the AMSCO 7,000 HP washers. Both STERIS and Intuitive wanted to improve reprocessing options for customers with optimal cleaning outcomes. This details the journey they went through together, including the extensive validation efforts that both companies did as part of this project. And we also detail in the white paper how we did this. So we detail the process that both companies took together and what a validation looked like for both companies too, because I think the details of validation aren't often talked about. We put these devices through the ringer, so to speak, literally and figuratively, where we did very much a worst case soiling situation. Then we tried to replicate surgical maneuvers. And then we actually did some testing in real life with real surgical cases. But we detail all of that in the paper to share with sterile processing, customers what exactly we did together.
That real life testing, is that a requirement or was that an extra step that you took at STERIS?
That's a requirement. So that's something that ordinarily in a 510K that you would do that real life testing, as well as what we would call simulated use testing as well. So
I'm not sure that everybody is fully aware of that as part of that 510K. Like we've had some conversations about that, especially specific to test soils. And we've had a couple of podcasts on that, but I don't know that we've ever really detailed on the show before that real life testing. I think that's so critical because I know that sometimes people feel like it's done in a lab, but it's not really tested out there in the real world. And so I think that's a really critical part of this validation and that understanding, like it's gone into real world situations to make sure that it's working and that it's doing what you're expecting it to do.
Yeah, it absolutely has been put through that real life scenario as well as in the lab, so to speak, where we're trying to come up with in the lab, we really try to simulate a worst case condition. So real life use is a little bit different, but yeah, we did do both as part of this. And we do have products now that have shipped to customers and they're in use as well. So we have the real life testing that occurred, and then we also have real life feedback on the impact the RES racks and cycle are having in our customers' locations as well.
What are you hearing from them? Now that it's out there and they're using it, what kinds of feedback are you getting?
Well, I had a recent conversation with a customer who had some older washers, which I think a lot of folks can relate to that scenario, having, washers that are, in this case, this customer had 10-year-old washers, so older technology, and they had a pretty large backlog in decontam with their older washers, whether it be the robotic instruments as well as their other instrumentation. And when they installed the solution with the 7053 HP washer, it really changed their workflow for all of the instrumentation, especially Da Vinci instruments. They no longer have the backlog for a large portion of the day in decontam. The instruments are getting through to the clean side with much less rework. We're hearing really positive things, and that's just one example that I heard recently from a customer.
And so you were telling us about the white paper, and I know that you're also planning a poster presentation at WFHSS, which is commonly referred to as the World Sterilization Congress. We're recording this before that happens, but the episode will come out after that. Can you tell us more about the poster presentation? I imagine you're going to be really excited to get the word out about this collaboration for validation.
Yes, we are excited. Both companies will be attending the World Sterilization Congress and presenting this poster content together, which is exciting to share this collaboration with the world because we feel like it's unique and it's been a lot of work in the making as well. These two companies have been partnering. This is not just a 6-month endeavor. It's literally been years of joint efforts together, years of my life, but time very much well spent. And it's exciting to see it come to fruition, both companies being able to share that with our mutual customers.
What a great time to be talking to you. You just said several years of your life has been spent, on this project and seeing it come through as a success. You must be super proud to be at this point. And I can only imagine how much, time and energy that you spent on this.
It was a significant amount of effort, but those customer stories that we've heard and the one that I just shared, that's what makes it all worth it in the end. When we hear how much it's impacting our customers and how much it can make a difference in saving time, but then having very reliable outcomes from day to day, that's just so rewarding to hear that. Makes it all worth it in the end.
Well, congratulations. Good for you, and congratulations to your team as well. I know it's not one person. There's many people behind the scenes making this happen. And I really love the story about the collaboration around the validation piece. I think it's a great example, of really what the industry needs moving forward to really remove a lot of that guesswork or that conflict, that IFU conflict that so many departments have to work through every single day.
Yeah. And it was a pretty big collaboration effort when you talk about it wasn't just one or two team members or even sites. We had the Intuitive team in California. We had our scientific team in St. Louis. And then we also had a team in Mentor and a team in Quebec, Canada, where our washers are manufactured. So this was a, multi-site, multi-teams, lots of people collaborating to get this over the finish line. And we're all excited. I mean, I think everyone on that team is really proud of the joint efforts both companies have put forth, and we're excited.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to partner with you to get the word out, and we think people will be really interested in this solution. If more people want information about the AMSCO 7052 HP and AMSCO 7053 HP washer disinfectors and the RAS cycle and racks, then they should contact a STERIS representative. Visit STERIS University to earn lots of free CEs, and you can learn more about the AMSCO 7000 HP by visiting directly at steris.com/7000HP. And finally, there'll be bonus content on the smartphone app for iPhone and Android if you download the Beyond Clean app for your mobile device. So, Sarah, really nice job today, but honestly, congratulations on several years of work coming to fruition and really solving, an issue in the industry and saving time, which is a very valuable resource in sterile processing departments across the country, especially right now.
Absolutely. And thanks, Justin.
That was Sarah Brown, Senior Product Manager at STERIS, and we were talking about the AMSCO 7000 HP, a solution for reprocessing robotic instruments. And there's just nothing like that time when you get the word and, hey, we're bringing in the robot and we're going to start cases on Monday. The whole training piece, especially from a manual perspective, it's really hard to get everybody up to speed with all those steps and variation. And I want to just say that I think this collaboration around validation between STERIS and Intuitive really solves a lot of problems in the industry. They should definitely be congratulated for that partnership. And they presented at the World Sterilization Congress. And I know many of you listeners out there, because I've heard from you, attended the conference. So you may have seen that while you were there. I do want to remind everybody that you can contact a STERIS representative to get a quote or more information on the 7000 HP washers, RAS cycle, and racks. We've also got bonus content. If you want to get more information, just download our smartphone app for iPhone or Android and click on that gift box. And then finally, follow STERIS Healthcare Products on LinkedIn. Visit STERIS University for so many free CEs, and you can learn more about specifically the AMSCO 7000 HP by going to steris.com/7000HP. That's going to do it for this vendor spotlight. As a reminder, you can help support Beyond Clean by subscribing on Apple, Amazon, or Google Podcasts. You can also find us on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast application. As I mentioned on this episode, you can access bonus content by downloading our smartphone app for iPhone and Android. But while you're there, we'd really appreciate a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. If you have any topics that you'd like us to cover on a future episode, just send an email on over to info@beyondclean.net. Thank you for listening to this vendor spotlight on Beyond Clean.